This happened in 2017. I had been in Korea for about 6 months, and honestly, that was one of the happiest times of my life here. My dream of moving abroad had become a reality. I was living it every single day. I had an amazing job where they treated me really well. I had a beautiful apartment. And I mentioned the apartment because sometimes in South Korea, you have an amazing job, but then your apartment looks terrible, or you have a beautiful apartment, but then in your job, they don't treat you very well, or both of them are just terrible. In my case, everything was going really well. It felt like everything had aligned perfectly just for me. It was in August, in summer, and if you know anything about Korean summers, it is that they are hot, humid, and extremely uncomfortable. You are sweating all the time. I'm actually sweating right now. Literally, the only thing you want to be doing is being in your apartment, fully naked, and just have your aircon on the whole day. My job was about an hour away with the bus and about 40 minutes with the subway. I always took the subway. The problem with the subway was that I had to take 3 different trains and then walk for 10 minutes when I go to work. So my morning commutes were a hassle. I'm also a person who's not that great with time, so I was always running late, which meant that my mornings were stressful, anxiety-filled. I was chasing the train. It was chaos. On this particular day, I decided to wear a dress because why not? A dress is cute and it was hot. I was running to catch my first train. I managed to get to the train on time and it was full. All the seats were taken. People were like standing and pushing against each other. And this was also another theme of my morning commutes, being in trains that were full of people and people pushing against each other. I was standing because there were no seats. As I was standing there, I was also on my phone because that's what people do here when they are in the subway. Nobody is talking to anybody. As I was standing there, minding my own business, I started to feel a bit of sensation on my thigh. And I ignored it because I thought, you are in the subway, it's full, people are pushing against each other, so there's probably somebody behind you standing too close and thus they are pushing against you, so that's where the sensation is coming from. It continued. I still ignored it. But then at some point, I realized that it was more than just like a slight sensation. It was an actual hand and it was on my bum. As soon as I realized what was going on, my immediate reaction was to freeze. I was totally frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't turn around. I was just literally standing there with my body just totally frozen. The only thing I managed to do was to lift my head up, look ahead and see if I could see the person behind me on the door. As soon as they realized that I had noticed what was going on, at least that's what I think, they moved. I saw this guy passing behind me going to stand in a different direction. But because I was frozen and I was terrified about what had just happened, I couldn't even get myself to turn around and look at him, or at least make him realize that I had seen him. I couldn't do anything. I was just standing there, frozen, just looking ahead. Soon after that happened, the train stopped and I had to get out. So I was running to make sure that I catch my next train. I got into my next train and I was relieved, and then my adrenaline came down. And as soon as it did, I started thinking about what had just happened. The initial thought I had, no man, there's no way that happened. You were just overthinking things. There's no way that happened. The second one was, oh my God, that actually happened. I'm in disbelief. The third one was, that happened and you did nothing. The fourth one was like, yes, that happened and you did nothing, but then what could you have done? And as soon as I settled and realized that it had happened, I started crying. I cried because I was both angry at myself for not doing anything and also because I felt helpless. The rational thought I had was, even if I had screamed or shouted at that guy, there is a likelihood that nobody, and absolutely nobody, was going to do anything. One, because people here are really, really good at minding their own business. 2, because people were rushing to work. 3, because I couldn't speak Korean. 4, because I'm a foreigner who couldn't speak Korean and people were just going to think that I'm crazy and they were just going to leave me alone. So I felt like even if I had done something, nobody was going to do anything to help me. And at the end of the day, I would have ended up feeling embarrassed. So I just cried. At the same time, I was so embarrassed that I was crying in the subway with other people around, because when you see a person crying randomly, you think, oh, someone died or they got dumped. I was hiding my face. I got to work and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I went to my classroom and I told my co-teacher about it. Her initial response was, oh my God, why didn't you call the cops? And I looked at her and said, call the cops and say what? I don't even speak Korean, and there's a likelihood that somebody there who would have answered the call possibly doesn't even speak English too. And she said, you could have called me and then I could have helped you talk to the cops. And I said, I didn't think about it. Her next response was, looked at me and said, oh, but the dress you're wearing is very short. And I thought, okay, but so what? And then she said, the principal and the vice principal are not going to be happy with the dress that you're wearing. And honestly, I was very disappointed. One, because the only reason why I was able to wear that dress to work was because I could see that everyone around me was wearing something short. I also saw the sports teacher wearing the tightest, shortest tights I've ever seen in a place of work, but she's a sports teacher, so I thought it was okay. And so I figured, why wouldn't I get away with my slightly short casual dress when everybody at work dresses like that? Also because, why does that matter? Later that day, I went and I posted on the women's group in South Korea on Facebook. I got a lot of support. A lot of people there were very supporting. In fact, everyone who commented on my post was very supportive. Many women were sharing their stories. They were sharing helpful tips on what you should say in Korean when these kind of things happen. There was one story which stood out for me. There was this one woman who said she was in a train to Seoul and sitting next to an older guy. As she was trying to fall asleep next to this guy, he started touching her. The first time she told him to stop and then continued to try to fall asleep. Then this guy continued to touch her. And so she ended up calling the conductors, shouting at him, telling them to change her seat. And luckily, they managed to change her seat. And she was able to continue with her journey in peace. But they still had the guy on the train. They never kicked him out. After that post and hearing all those stories, it was as though I had woken up from something. Because I noticed that there were signs in almost all the subway stops, including the one I had been using on my commute, that were warning men against taking pictures of women while they were walking up the stairs or just walking around the subway. And I started thinking about how the guy who was behind me might have been taking videos or pictures of my bum, and that there's possibly a picture or videos of my bum in some porn site, and I possibly will never ever know about it. It was as though I had woken up from some dream and I realized that, oh my God, so okay, this happens. This really happens. After that, I decided to make a video about it. I wanted to make a video about it because I wanted to go beyond the women's group. I wanted to post it on YouTube, and then hopefully some people coming to Korea can know that these kind of things happen, unlike me. But YouTube is a different place. I got a tiny bit of support. And then had a bunch of people basically telling me I was making Korea look bad and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. But there was one comment which stood out for me. I'm not sure why, but my gut is telling me that person was South African. This person went and got some stats, and their comment was like, this happens to women in South Africa. This happens to women in South Africa. This happens to women in South Africa. How dare you make Korea look bad? You are making a big deal out of nothing, and you are way safer in South Korea than you will ever be in South Africa. As a person who had lived in South Africa for 25 years and had seen all kinds of things happening around me, I thought, he's right. I am making a big deal out of nothing. Worse things could have happened to me, but some guy just touched my bum, so it's not a big deal, right? So I felt so guilty and bad that I decided to take the video down. It took me a really long time to be pissed about the situation, to be pissed at myself as well as that person. I had allowed this internet stranger to invalidate my feelings, to make me feel like the violation I had experienced was nothing. I was being dramatic. I was over-exaggerating a small, meaningless situation when I come from one of the most dangerous countries in the world. I will never deny that South Africa isn't a safe place, especially for women and children. But what does that mean for South Africans outside of South Africa? That we don't ever get to speak up about experiencing injustices in other countries? That we don't get to complain about anything ever? That being from South Africa automatically allows others to do as they please with us and to us? Would it make any difference if, say, I was from Iceland, the safest country in the world? Would I then be allowed to make a video about my sexual assault because it's something that I am not used to and shouldn't be used to? No one should ever be used to any kind of assault or abuse because where they are from, those things are a common occurrence. I had every right to feel the way that I did. Every right to feel violated and share my story in the way that I wanted to. And no one, absolutely no one, had a right to tell me otherwise.